Right? And we're going to talk about some things that are terribly important and terribly complex to a lot of people, as well as fun Star Trek starships. So you're with Lucid Sight. Can you tell us a little bit about Lucid Sight and what you do and how you came to be here at the Star Trek convention?
Sure thing. Lucid Sight is a game development studio based in Los Angeles, California. We make frontier games that use technology that haven't necessarily gone mainstream, and we're looking to develop those out. And I'm here today because we have a space MMORPG that's going to have a limited time Star Trek event where we're bringing Star Trek ships into our universe. But what's unique about this is all our games use blockchain technology to make them true digital assets that have a little bit more utility than normal game digital assets.
And this is all backed by blockchain. And can you tell us a little bit about blockchain? I think is one of those things that everybody hears a lot about. But how many of you have a thorough understanding of what blockchain is and why it's important? I see literally two hands, well, 2.5 hands. Well, you guys don't count. So it's something that's in the news a lot, and you hear about it a lot. And my wife works in technology, and so I've been hearing a lot about it for many years, about how important it is and how it's going to really shape a lot of our futures in many ways, especially as more and more things go online. Pretending that a lot of people in here don't know that much about blockchain, which seems to be the case, can you give us a primer on why that's important for what you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, to start off with, simply put, a blockchain is basically a distributed database that's hosted on thousands of computers worldwide. And to make changes to this database, 51% of the computers need to agree that the change submitted is valid. This fact that 51% of thousands of computers need to agree on a change is what makes blockchain so hard to hack. If someone really wanted to change a value or modify an item or copy and paste a document on a blockchain, they would have to hack 51%, so that could be 50,000 computers, 100,000 computers simultaneously, make the transaction happen within a very small period of time, and then get that submitted to the network so the remaining 49% of computers agree. And that being nearly impossible for anyone to do is why blockchain is so powerful, why Bitcoin, the best use case example of blockchain, currently is valued at around $10,000 a coin. And it's enabled us to do what we're doing with digital starships, baseball players, and other game companies doing with race cars and other things.
So what you're talking about here is to just put it in a Star Trek construct, instead of hacking into the computer on the Enterprise D, you would have to simultaneously hack every starship in the fleet and get them all to agree that what you're hacking is valid.
Basically.
Something like that.
So yeah, exactly like that. So trying to be present in all those places and coordinate it is impossible even in today.
So now you understand that, right? Okay, good. So let's move on to a little bit about your game. Here's that screen about the basics of it, and then a little bit about what's coming up. So if you can speak to what we've got here, August 29th.
August 29th is going to be a big day. I hope goes down in Star Trek history as the first time the Enterprise will be coming to the Ethereum blockchain. So I'd like to use the example, this is akin to the first toys being minted in the 60s. Once these are created, they'll exist on the blockchain forever. So Ethereum could be around 700, 800, 1,000 years. You'd be able to go back and see, John is the one who bought that first #1 Enterprise. He still owns it today. Hopefully he didn't lose the private key.
What happens if you lose it?
Just like a real item, if you drop it and it breaks, or if you lose, you put it in a safety deposit box and forget which bank it's in, you'll never be able to recover it. Unlike a lot of other digital files where there's always different methods of recovery, with blockchain technology, you lose your password that secures this, or lose the address where you placed it, and you have no other record, there's no way to recover it.
So hang on to it. But that same thing also helps ensure the value of it.
Yeah, basically the fact that you can have this loss, the scarcity, and it's possible to copy or change ownership is what makes blockchain so powerful. And it's a concept that we've been talking about for a couple of years, and talking to our community, and we've had gamers coming in. Most of them have a hard time grasping it because we're all used to copy and paste. You can copy and paste a word in the document. I can duplicate a document. I can make multiple backups. How can something digital, ones and zeros, act in a way that I expect a physical table or an actual toy to do? And it's just the remarkable nature of blockchain technology, and why I actually think it's a fundamental sea change, not in gaming, but in how we're going to do a lot of data storage moving down the future. There's been talks about using it to secure medical records, or identification, document control, inventory control. All very Star Trek right there.
It is, and it sounds like something I need to be more deeply aware of for the voluminous amount of Star Trek assets that we have these days with all these new shows. So August 29th, everything is launching with it. What is launching on that date? What is going to be available?
Sure. On August 29th, we'll launch an event in our CSE MMO, which will be available on Steam next week for anyone to play. And in that game, 6 ships from several of the series will be available.
We've got some images of them here, so we'll start with them.
Yes, the first ship that we're going to introduce is the original series USS Enterprise, NCC 1701. It's actually going to have the blockchain serial number of 1701. Just happened that we had that available, and it seemed very like a great homage to this being the first of the first. Ones created after it during the event won't have that serial number, so the number 1 asset ever created on our game using the Ethereum blockchain will be this Enterprise with the number 1701.
Is that your favorite starship?
It's not my favorite starship. I actually grew up watching Star Trek Voyager. I actually watched Next Generation first, but Voyager I was there watching for the premiere, and I was there watching for the finale on Channel 13 in Los Angeles. And so I remember every weeknight, I don't actually think I ever missed an episode as it was airing.
That's great. So you come to this legitimately then?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Star Trek. Star Trek's the reason I got into software development. Star Trek's the reason why I love game development. The holodecks inspired me. Anyone who's used VR or seen some of the VR examples here, like that, we're so close to that holodeck of the Star Trek universe. Looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah, we've got a Sandbox VR. We've been in development on that game for a while. I can't wait to go and get fully suited up and go into a VR environment with that. It's very exciting. We're starting to get on the cusp of so many of these Star Trek technologies, and you see data on TNG go in and put these unbreakable encryption codes on the computer, and it's like, this is a lot easier than that, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely. Right now, my belief is Data was just creating a blockchain from scratch, and that's how to make the computer secure. Easy. I will say, going back to the holodeck here, this is another example of scarce items like those true digital items. Right now, while they're limited to the CSE Sandbox, maybe someday down the road there is some type of virtual reality program where you can observe these as 3D models. The nice thing about blockchain ownership when it comes to assets is that ownership is very unique and it's provable and it's independently tradable with that individual, but that ownership could be read publicly by any other game client or experience. It just depends whether the permissions are allowed.
Awesome. Well, let's look at some of the other ships.
This one, iconic NCC 1701 Enterprise D, the first Star Trek I've ever seen. Started with it when I was 10 years old and just fell in love. This is actually the ship compared to a ship in our universe called the Frost Saber. The IKS Rataran from Deep Space Nine, General Martok ship, was the ship that Worf's son was a crew member aboard. It came out beautifully in our game renders. This is actually taken from moving the camera in the game, staging that explosion, and screenshotting it. Our team just did a phenomenal job. Can't wait till you guys see it in action later this month.
Yeah, the Klingon Bird of Prey, it's such a great ship design because it's got the movable wings that provide just a kind of an almost infinite variation of how the angles that you can get on it looks so dynamic.
And our team implemented those movable wings. Even though no other ship in our game actually can move its physical wings, this was a feature we added just to showcase our Bird of Prey.
And then we also have the USS Voyager.
This is my favorite ship. Captain Janeway is my captain. I grew up watching every episode with her. And this ship is iconic to me because it is one of the few ships that had nacelles that animate. And we included that in the design for this as well.
And she's your favorite captain even after what she did to Tuvix?
Yes.
Okay,
we needed Neelix.
We'll talk later about that. And then I think we also have the USS Defiant.
Yes, the only Federation warship in the Prime timeline. It is a beautifully done ship. Actually, one thing we noticed when we were putting it together, and as a fan, I'm surprised I didn't notice this before, it has no windows on its exterior. But instead, the windows are on the inside underneath. And if you think about it, if you're building a warship, you want to limit the amount of surfaces that an enemy can penetrate. There's, I think, a couple of them, but not as many as some of the other ships.
Yeah. Then I think we also have, miraculously, a runabout that has survived contact with any away mission.
I think that's why it's a famous runabout. It has survived most away missions. So the USS Rio Grande, it's a standard issue runabout in the Deep Space Nine universe. Being this is a limited time event, we wanted to make sure there was at least something Star Trek any user in CSU will be able to get. So this will be the most commonly available item, while other ships will have some level of rarity that will be announcing closer to the event. This one will be pretty much available to anyone participating.
So you mentioned you were attracted to software development, and you've long been a fan of Star Trek. Did you? What was your path into what you're doing now? Did you? Was it a long-running plan for you to get here? I'm all the people that I wind up working with that come into Star Trek, and some are huge fans, some are casual fans, and it's always fascinating to me because growing up there for a very long time, I never would have imagined I could do what I do, where I get to work with Star Trek on a very intimate level on a daily basis. At one point in time, it just wouldn't occur to me that that's an actual job. So what was your path to where you are now?
Absolutely. I pretty much feel I'm dreaming every day when I get to wake up and make games. When we started to integrate Star Trek into our game, I was pretty sure this is a dream. I'm waking up tomorrow, be back at the bank working. So actually, I have an interesting history here. So when I was 10, very young, I saw the holodeck, I understood what I wanted to do. I had a computer, and I started just decompiling anything I can, going into QBasic, looking at how they made the Little Gorillas game. And I pursued that pretty heavily throughout my childhood, going through high school and then into college. And then I believe it was my second year of college, I had a professor in computer science actually tell me that all the jobs are going to India, and if you stick with computer science, you're not going to have a career. And I believed it. So I actually panicked, changed my major to international business and marketing, left school working in the mortgage and banking industry for 3 years. And then the fourth year, I'm like, I really don't like this. And my wonderful wife's like, all right, well, why don't you pursue what you want? And so reset my career, applied to hundreds of game companies for an entry-level engineering position. Found one in Santa Monica, California with Collision Studios, and after that, just sky was the limit for me. Ran the studio after 2 years and moved on to some other startups, and then got fortunate to start this company with my two co-founders, Randy and Octavian.
That's great. I've been working on Star Trek now for almost 21 years. But the job I had immediately prior to starting back then at Paramount was I worked for Blue Cross in California, and I sat in the cubicle and I edited medical sales insurance or medical insurance sales collateral materials. And it was a great job to have on many levels, but it was like you. It's like there's something else that I need to do or that I would rather do, and I came across the opportunity, and I mean it's a ton of work on a daily basis. But when it's something that you really enjoy doing, that you wake up in the morning, it's like, I can't believe I get to do this today. It's worth it. There's actually a huge array of opportunities to do stuff if you really want to go after it and apply for it.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I've ever worked as hard those first few days, even today. I don't think I've ever worked as hard in my life, but every morning I love what I do. And I just think about when I was working at the bank, which was a great job, pays the bills, wonderful people there, but just not what I was passionate about. And I just got very fortunate to find myself here, Star Trek Convention 2019, talking about bringing starships into a game we designed. Mind blowing.
Yeah, it's great. There's definitely worse places to be by far. So I think we have a little bit of a game trailer here, so let's see if we can take a look at that. All right, so can you tell us a little bit about what we were seeing there?
Sure. So CSC is a space MMORPG, similar to EVE Online, if you guys are familiar with that game. Except we went with a more stylized look and a more casual gameplay. It's easier to get in, it's fun to explore. There's a huge community of users already. Someone made the joke the other day that a certain station in our game reminded them of the 405 freeway, the amount of traffic going back and forth through it. And CSC is built primarily as a sandbox, so it's meant for users to come in there, control their destinies, control the economies, control the story. And so it's great to bring Star Trek in there and already see a lot of users role-playing with the Star Trek franchise, creating the Ferengi Alliance, which is a trading conglomerate within the game universe, the Borg Collective, who's at conflict with our largest guild. It's quite amazing what's happening already with digital ownership, how it empowers users, even at the small scale we are right now, to start taking real ownership over these concepts, ideas, and building out these worlds.
Awesome. Do we have any questions that anybody has at this point?
Yeah, it's already supported with OpenSea. Since it's an open standard, ERC 721, and we're adhering to that with all the assets we make. Users can take and trade assets independently of the game client.
Okay, any others right now? See, you've explained it well. So, you were telling me backstage this is the first time you've been to a convention like this.
Yeah.
What's your experience been so far?
The fans are amazing. I kept reading online that you'll see some of the best fans at this convention. It absolutely is the case. Everywhere, even after the convention, we're sitting down talking to people. So much love for the brand and the world Gene Roddenberry's created. And so happy and excited to share trivia and facts. It's been phenomenal. It's been a great learning experience for our team, really understanding what the Star Trek community is looking for.
One of the things I really love about this show in particular, and I think you can sense it all around, is every year when you come here, you see these sort of moments between fans who, every year they're back here, and it's kind of literally their Star Trek family, and they come here and you see these little like mini reunions from people as they see their friends who they haven't seen since the last convention. They live in wildly disparate parts of the US or even around the world, and it's this great little reunion of everybody all sharing their passion for the same, the same show. And you'll see people trying to figure out, well, what to do next. It's like, well, let's go upstairs and watch a Star Trek episode. It's like, it's inescapable.
It's amazing. It's amazing that this occurs. I don't know how I've not been to one of these conferences before, and I think definitely gonna make a routine for myself.
Well, you're welcome back anytime.
Star Trek Online.
I think it's more of a compliment. Star Trek Online's one of my favorite games. I played heavily, and they have an amazing universe they've built out. CSE is a more open world. There's not very directed narratives. Users are kind of free to do what they'd like. I actually joke that we built a game that we really expect players to kind of play on a second window or in like a pop-up because it's a slower paced game. For example, traveling between star systems actually take real time, so it could take you an hour or 36 hours or 48 to get there. So I would definitely say a compliment to it. The Star Trek ships coming to our game are Star Trek IP, and they look gorgeous, and they look as good as if they look at Star Trek Online, but there's going to be no story elements around it other than the fiction that we're using to integrate them. No, we do have, in our universe, where the equivalent of what Transwarp is, in the Star Trek event, there will be Transwarp modules that can be added to certain ships. So then users would not need to wait 36 hours to get between systems, because that's a little bit of a time. But yeah.
Sometimes that would be very welcome in gaming, though. It's like, I'm going to be away for the weekend, but I don't want to have to keep checking in on the game every 6 hours or 2 hours or whatever it is.
I was extremely surprised one day when I turned on one of the streaming services and saw CSE was being streamed, and it was hour 24, and I look at it, and yes, he had filmed the warp scene that looks just beautiful art, and then just the timer at the top till he reaches the destination, streamed the whole thing. Like our fans are amazing. They're doing things we would never expect at this scale, and there's something about true digital ownership where we're onto something here. We're seeing this with small user groups, and as we're making it easier and easier for users to interact. Like right now, CSE is one of the few games that use blockchain technology that you don't need to have an understanding of blockchain to actually own these items. You can buy them with a credit card. You can just create your Steam account. You can use Steam Bucks through your wallet. Very few other blockchain games out there give you that flexibility.
And you mentioned an example to me, which I'm sure is a little on the high end, but it also sounds like it's not that rare. Can you tell us about the Formula One car?
Oh, yeah. So Animoca Brands, a company, just partnered with F1 Racing, Formula One Racing, and they put up a ship, Star Trek on my brain. They put up a race car, the first one ever in existence on the blockchain that had the Formula One brand, for auction. That went for 2 months ago, $110,000. And if this was one fluke, one example, that'd be something, but we've seen now over the last year several different items selling for tens of thousands and over $100,000.
And that goes to the digital scarcity that you were talking about, and then having it backed by the security of blockchain.
Exactly. The visual scarcity really enforces that regardless of where the game is, that ownership record will always exist. As long as Ethereum exists, you can say, I was the first owner of this item. And there are users out there that value that. They value, I think, their time investment in a game to have some type of immutable achievement, really, which is what it is. Forever and ever, someone will know the first person to buy a space station in CSE bought it for $54,000. That record can never be changed, it always exists, it's bragging rights, it's a brand, and not only that, that user is actually extremely active in their game, galvanizing communities, has one of the biggest guilds so far.
That's awesome. All right, well, before we wrap up here, are there any other questions?
Don't know yet. We'll have to find out someday down the road.
I do know he is remarkably well versed on this subject of crypto and things like that. So.
Follow-up Shatter question. I know he's a follow-up Ethereum. Do you have any what's going on there with Ethereum Shatter?
Oh no, I'm aware of the project. I actually spoke to Shatner's representative who's working on that here. It's an interesting project, and it's interesting that they're using blockchain to prove the provenance of physical collectibles, which is actually a really good use case because then you can have an immutable record that no one can adjust.
That just provides a little extra backup.
Exactly.
All right, well, thank you very much for being here, and thank you, Fosri, and I hope you've had an amazing time at Star Trek Las Vegas, and the same to everybody else here. It's a very busy week here. We're past the halfway point in the week, but it is one of the most invigorating weeks of the year for Star Trek to see everybody, just really appreciating everything that goes on with Star Trek. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, Fosri.
Thanks for having me, and thank you, everyone.